You have been lied to your entire life about what intelligence is for. They told you it was a gift, a superpower, a golden ticket to clarity in a confused world, but no one warned you about the cost. No one told you that the sharper your mind becomes, the more the world punishes you for using it. Every room you walk into, you feel it, the invisible weight. You see patterns others miss. You hear the contradiction buried inside the confident statement. You catch the logical fallacy before the sentence is even finished. And you carry all of it silently, because the moment you open your mouth and say what you actually see, the room turns hostile. Not because you are wrong, because you made someone feel wrong. And in a world that runs on feelings, that is the only unforgivable crime. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this violence better than anyone who ever lived. He was not a diplomat. He was not a diplomat. He was not interested in making stupidity comfortable. He looked at the world with the coldest possible eye and arrived at a conclusion that most people are too polite or too afraid to accept. The majority of human beings do not think. They repeat, they echo, they absorb the loudest opinion in the room and wear it like armor. And when a genuinely intelligent person threatens that armor, they do not reconsider, they attack. You have lived this. You know exactly what it feels like to explain something with perfect precision, calm, measured, backed by evidence, and watch the other person's face harden, not soften, harden. You watch them dig in deeper. You watch them shift the goalposts. You watch them suddenly make it personal. You always think you're better than everyone. Why do you have to make everything so complicated? You just like to argue. And just like that, the conversation is no longer about the truth. It is about your character. They could not kill the message, so they are trying to kill the messenger. This is not a failure of communication. This is not a misunderstanding you can fix with a better analogy or a softer tone. This is a collision between two fundamentally different operating systems. And Schopenhauer mapped this collision 200 years before modern psychology gave it a name. He saw what Kahneman would later confirm, what Dunning and Kruger would later measure, what every exhausted, intelligent person has felt in their bones since childhood. You are not playing the same game as the people around you. You are playing chess. They are flipping the board because they do not like where the pieces are going. So what do? Do you keep explaining? Do you keep demeaning it down, softening your language, wrapping the truth in enough cotton wool that it does not bruise their ego? You have tried that. It does not work. The cotton wool just gives them something else to tear apart. Do you fight? Do you sharpen your argument until it is a blade and cut through their defenses? You have tried that too. You win the argument and lose the relationship. You prove the point and gain an enemy. You walk away technically correct and spiritually gutted. There is a third path, a path that Schopenhauer carved through the wreckage of centuries of pointless intellectual warfare. It is not louder. It is not softer. It is something far more dangerous than either. It is the strategic refusal to participate in a game you were never meant to lose, but were never designed to win. What follows will change the way you move through every room for the rest of your life. The first thing you must accept is the most painful. You cannot reason someone out of a position they did not reason themselves into. This is not a clever quote to stitch onto a pillow. It is a law of human cognition, and violating it has cost you years of your life. Schopenhauer saw it with terrifying clarity. In the world as will and representation, he laid bare a truth that still makes philosophers uncomfortable. The intellect is not the master of the human mind. It is the servant. The real ruler is the will, that blind, turning, irrational engine of desire and ego and fear that drives every human action. When a person forms an opinion, they do not start with evidence. They start with a feeling. The feeling comes first. The justification comes second. The evidence is cherry-picked last, arranged like furniture in a house that was already built before a single fact walked through the door. This is why your perfectly constructed argument bounces off them like rain off stone. You are addressing the intellect, but the intellect is not in charge. You are negotiating with the secretary while the CEO sits in the back room refusing to take the meeting. The CEO is their ego, and their ego decided the outcome of this argument before you opened your mouth. Kahneman confirmed this with decades of laboratory research. System 1, the fast, emotional, instinctual brain makes the decision. System 2, the slow, rational, analytical brain invents a story to justify it. The person you are arguing with is not thinking. They are performing the appearance of thought. They have already concluded. They are just decorating the conclusion with language that sounds like reasoning. And you, the intelligent one, are fooled every single time because you assume the decoration is real. Stop being fooled. When you argue with a fool, you are feeding a machine that converts your energy into their self-importance. Every counterpoint you raise tells them their idea was significant enough to warrant your attention. Every fact you present gives them a new surface to push back against. Every minute you invest in the exchange is a minute they drain from your life without producing a single watt of value. Schopenhauer compared it to wrestling with a pig. You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. You must understand the economics of this exchange. Your cognitive energy is finite. Kahneman's research on cognitive depletion proved this. Every decision you make, every complex thought you process, draws from a limited reservoir. When you spend 40 minutes dissecting someone's flawed logic, you are not just wasting time. You are degrading your ability to think clearly about things that actually matter. You leave the conversation dumber than when you entered it, not because they convinced you, because they exhausted you. They won by attrition, and they did not even know they were fighting. So here is the first weapon Schopenhauer hands you. Strategic agreement, not sincere agreement. Strategic agreement. When a fool presents you with an absurd position, do not resist it. Accelerate it. Push their logic further than they ever intended it to go. Agree with them so completely that their own argument collapses under the weight of its consequences. A colleague tells you that formal education is worthless, that everything you need to know you can learn on the internet. The old you would argue. You would cite research. You would talk about structured learning, critical thinking, credentialed expertise, and they would brush all of it aside with a YouTube anecdote about a dropout billionaire. Instead, lean forward. You are absolutely right. In fact, I think we should go further. We should shut down every university immediately. Hospitals can just hire surgeons who watch tutorials. We will let pilots learn from flight simulator videos. The savings alone would be incredible. How soon can we start? Watch what happens. You have not attacked their position. You have carried it to its logical destination, and the destination is a cliff. They now have two choices: walk off the edge and look absurd, or quietly step backward and pretend they meant something more moderate all along. Either way, you spent almost no energy. You let their own argument do the demolition work. This is reductio ad absurdum, the philosophical technique Schopenhauer wielded like a scalpel. You do not fight the sickness. You let the sickness show its own symptoms until even the patient cannot deny them. But here is the key most people miss. You must do it without malice in your voice. You must sound genuinely enthusiastic. The moment sarcasm leaks through, they will detect the attack and the defenses go back up. Your delivery must be so earnest, so supportive, that they cannot distinguish your strategy from sincere validation. The fool thinks you are on their side. The intelligent people in the room see exactly what you did, and you never raised your voice. Now comes the harder lesson. What do you do when the fool has authority over you? When the ignorant person is your manager, your client, the person who controls your income or your reputation? You cannot accelerate their arguments into absurdity when they hold the power to fire you. You cannot use irony when they sign your paycheck. This requires a completely different instrument. Schopenhauer understood power dynamics with the precision of a surgeon. He wrote that talent hits a target no one else can hit, but genius hits a target no one else can see. When you are beneath a powerful fool, your target is invisible. It has to be. The moment they see your intelligence as a threat, you become the enemy. And a fool with power does not fight fair. They fight with bureaucracy, with exclusion, with the slow suffocation of your opportunities. They will never say you are too smart. They will say you are not a culture fit. They will say you are not a culture fit. They will say you lack emotional intelligence. They will restructure your role until there is nothing left of it. They will smile while they do it. History is full of brilliant minds who understood this danger and survived it by mastering the art of strategic invisibility. In ancient China, during the chaos of the Three Kingdoms, the strategist Sima Yi served under rulers who were dangerously insecure and ruthlessly paranoid. Sima Yi was almost certainly the most capable mind in any room he entered. But he never displayed it. When the powerful fool above him made a terrible decision, Sima Yi did not object. He praised the decision. He asked the fool to explain the brilliance behind it, allowing the fool to bask in the warmth of his own imagined genius. Meanwhile, Sima Yi operated quietly, placing allies in key positions, gathering information, building an invisible infrastructure of influence that no one noticed until it was too late to dismantle. When the fool eventually collapsed under the weight of his own incompetence, Sima Yi was the only one left standing with the architecture already in place to take control. He did not defeat the fool by being smarter in public. He defeated the fool by being patient in private. He understood that intelligence displayed is intelligence wasted when you are standing in front of someone who experiences your competence as an insult to their existence. You must learn this brutal mathematics. When you are dealing with a fool who has power, every interaction is a transaction. The currency is ego. They are starving for it. Feed them. Ask for their opinion on decisions you have already made. Let them believe the idea was theirs. Thank them for guidance they did not actually provide. This is not weakness. This is the most sophisticated form of strength. You are purchasing freedom with the cheapest possible currency. Words that cost you nothing but buy you everything. Schopenhauer wrote that politeness is a tacit agreement that people's miserable defects shall on both sides be ignored. Apply this surgically. Your politeness is not submission. It is camouflage. Behind the mask of agreeability, your mind is free. You are observing. You are planning. You are building. The fool sees a loyal subordinate. The fool sees a team player. The fool sleeps soundly. And that is exactly where you want them. But there is a trap hiding inside this strategy, and it is the most dangerous trap of all. It is not the fool you need to worry about now. It is yourself. Intelligent people carry a deep, almost biological need to be recognized as intelligent. You do not just want to be right. You want people to see that you are right. You want the moment of concession. You want the look on their face when they realize you were correct all along. This need is your single greatest vulnerability, and every fool you encounter exploits it without even knowing they are doing it. When you argue with them, you are not really arguing about the topic. You are arguing for your own identity. You are saying, see me, acknowledge what I am. And every time they refuse, it cuts deeper than it should. Every time they dismiss your evidence or ignore your logic, it feels personal because it is personal. You have tied your sense of self to the outcome of a conversation with someone who is not equipped to evaluate what you are offering. Schopenhauer would call this the most elegant form of self-destruction. You have handed the keys to your emotional stability to the person least qualified to drive. You have made a fool the gatekeeper of your self-worth. And they do not even know they are holding the keys. They are just swinging them around carelessly, crashing into walls, and you are in the back seat flinching at every impact. Drop the keys. Let them fall. The moment you stop needing a fool to validate your intelligence is the moment you become truly untouchable. Not arrogant, not cold, untouchable. There is an enormous difference. Arrogance is performing superiority for an audience. Untouchability is genuinely not requiring the audience at all. This is where Schopenhauer's philosophy turns from strategy into something deeper, something that restructures the way you experience other people entirely. In The Wisdom of Life, he wrote about the difference between what a person is, what a person has, and what a person represents in the eyes of others. He argued that almost all human suffering comes from an obsessive fixation on the third category, reputation, perception, the opinions of minds you do not respect, operating on information they do not possess. You are miserable not because fools exist. You are miserable because you have given fools a vote on who you are. Revoke the vote. When you do this, something extraordinary happens. The fool who used to make your blood pressure spike becomes a case study. You watch them the way a biologist watches an organism under glass. You notice the patterns. You see how their insecurity drives them to dominate conversations. You see how their fear of being exposed makes them attack anyone who accidentally reveals the gap between their confidence and their competence. You see the Dunning-Kruger effect in real time, not as an abstract concept from a psychology textbook, but as a living, breathing architecture of self-deception playing out in front of you. And once you see the machinery, you can never unsee it. The fool becomes predictable, and what is predictable is manageable, and what is manageable can never hurt you. There is a specific type of fool you have not yet considered, and this is the one that does the most damage. It is not the loud one. It is not the aggressive one. It is the one who loves you, the family member who means well but whose advice is catastrophically wrong, the old friend whose worldview calcified 20 years ago but who insists on applying it to your present, the partner who supports you emotionally but undermines you intellectually by constantly pulling you toward the safe, the conventional, the mediocre. These people are not malicious. They are not even aware of what they are doing, and that is exactly what makes them so dangerous. You cannot use strategic agreement on your mother. You cannot deploy Simayi's patience against your best friend. These relationships require a different tool entirely, and Schopenhauer gave it a name that sounds cold, but is actually the deepest form of love an intelligent person can practice: distance. He called it the porcupine dilemma. On a freezing night, a group of porcupines huddle together for warmth, but their quills stab each other. They pull apart, they freeze, they try again, they bleed. The only solution is finding the exact distance where you are warm enough to survive, but far enough to avoid being wounded. This is not about cutting people out of your life. It is about managing the proximity of their influence on your mind. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to let their cognitive limitations shape your decisions. You can sit at the dinner table and smile warmly while internally filing their advice in the category where it belongs: well-intentioned, emotionally sincere, intellectually irrelevant. You do not correct them. You do not educate them. You thank them. And then you go home and do exactly what your own judgment tells you to do. This is not deception. This is the only way to preserve both the relationship and your own trajectory. The alternative is what you have been doing, absorbing their limitations, second-guessing your own clarity, and slowly shrinking your ambitions to fit inside the boundaries of someone else's understanding. Stop shrinking. Schopenhauer spent decades watching brilliant people destroy themselves this way, not through failure, but through compromise. They had the vision, they had the ability, but they kept explaining their vision to people who could not see past the immediate, the conventional, the comfortable, and slowly, like water wearing down stone, the friction of constant misunderstanding eroded their confidence. They stopped trusting their own perceptions. They started asking themselves if maybe the crowd was right. Maybe the safe path was wiser. Maybe their ambition was arrogance. And one day they woke up living a life that was designed by committee, assembled from the lowest common denominator of every mediocre opinion they ever absorbed. That life is a coffin built by consensus, and you are lying in it right now if you have been letting the crowd dictate the dimensions of your thinking. The truly intelligent person does not seek agreement, they seek accuracy. And accuracy is lonely. It has always been lonely. Schopenhauer died largely unrecognized by the academic establishment that worshipped Hegel, a philosopher Schopenhauer considered a fraud and a charlatan. He watched Hegel receive the prestige, the students, the institutional power. He watched mediocrity elevated to genius by a system that rewarded complexity theater over genuine insight. And he did not bend. He did not soften his positions to gain approval. He did not play the academic game. He sat alone with his poodle and his manuscripts and his devastating clarity. And he waited. He waited because he understood something that most intelligent people never learn. The crowd is not the jury. Time is. Hegel's philosophy has been largely dismantled by subsequent generations of thinkers. Schopenhauer's work became the foundation for Nietzsche, for Freud, for Wittgenstein, for an entire tradition of thought that shaped the modern world. The fool won the decade. The genius won the century. But you must be willing to lose the decade. That is the price. And most intelligent people are not willing to pay it because the decade feels long and the century feels abstract and the room full of fools feels very, very real right now. Pay it anyway. Let them call you difficult. Let them call you arrogant. Let them whisper that you think you are better than everyone. You know the truth, and the truth does not require their signature to be valid. Your only obligation is to protect the clarity you were given. Not to donate it to people who will misuse it, not to dilute it so the room feels more comfortable, not to apologize for it because someone else's ego bruises easily. Schopenhauer put it simply, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. If you are hitting targets that are invisible to the people around you, their inability to see the target is not evidence that the target does not exist. It is evidence that they are standing in the wrong place. Do not move to where they are standing. Do not lower your aim. Do not explain the target. Just hit it. The arrow will speak for itself eventually. And by the time the crowd finally sees where it landed, you will already be aiming at the next one. You have been exhausted for years, not because the world is hard, because you have been carrying a weight that was never yours to carry. You took on the impossible project of making the blind see, making the deaf hear, making the willfully ignorant reconsider. You thought it was your responsibility. It was never your responsibility. Your only responsibility. Your only responsibility is the ruthless, disciplined, uncompromising protection of your own mind. From this moment forward, you do not argue with fools, you observe them. You do not educate the willfully ignorant, you navigate around them. You do not seek validation from people who cannot comprehend what you are offering. You validate yourself by building what only you can build, thinking what only you can think, and moving with the quiet, lethal efficiency of someone who has finally stopped apologizing for being the sharpest mind in a room full of butter knives. Schopenhauer lived this, alone, uncompromised, unbowed. He did not beg the world to understand him. He outlasted the world's misunderstanding. And when history finally caught up, his words were still there, still sharp, still cutting through the same fog of ignorance they were forged to penetrate 2 centuries ago. Your intelligence is not a burden. It is not a social inconvenience. It is not a communication problem to be solved with softer language and more patience. It is a weapon. Keep it hidden. Keep it sharp. And stop handing it to people who will only use it to hurt you. The fools will keep talking. Let them. You have work to do.